running for Western Oklahoma, District 3, Congress. Now, when I say pass the salt at dinner, I have a lot of passion in my voice, but I'm intentionally pulling back right now, and it will build in the next 9.5 minutes. I promise you I will stay within my time. Before I begin, let me introduce my wife, Dr. Rochelle Burleson. Would you stand for a moment? She's the Chief Nursing Officer at St. Mary's Regional Medical Center in Enid, but she works for Universal Health Systems out of King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. She's in charge of clinical nursing in terms of 26,000 nurses across the country. She's been a part of the front lines of COVID for the last 2 years. She has her doctorate in nursing from Vanderbilt. She's a researcher like I am. I'm an author, a writer. Dinesh D'Souza is my dear friend. When I retired from pastoring the same church for 30 years in Enid, Oklahoma, he helped my wife and me buy a studio and install a podcast center and a writing center for me to write 40 books in retirement. That's a big deal for me because I love history, I love the scriptures, I love the Constitution. However, when I retired, a group of people approached me to run for Congress, to represent you in Western Oklahoma. I'm running against Frank Lucas, who is the incumbent, and I'm running against Sean Roberts. They are two good men who love the Lord, love their families, love their churches, love their country. I never go after anyone personally, but what I do is stand on principle. When Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, he spoke for 2 minutes and 2 seconds, 272 words. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty. I could give you the rest of the address, but I'll pause and tell you about a gentleman named Edward Everett. Have you ever heard of Edward Everett? No. He was the main speaker on that day at Gettysburg. He was a congressman from Massachusetts, considered the greatest orator of his day. He spoke for 2 hours and 2 minutes, 13,000 words, and you've never heard of him or his speech. Why? Political speech is about reputation. Principled speech is about the transformation of a nation. I'm a man who stands on principle. You say, what does that mean? My platform, in one word, is liberty. My wife says, oh yeah, everyone says that. Here's the problem. Everyone desires liberty, but very few people can define it. Now, I could take you to the writings of John Locke, because I love him, as did our founding fathers. But one of the gifts that the Lord has given me is to take the complex and bring it down to the simple. So that's what I want to do in the remaining 6.5 minutes. Liberty is like breathing. You never appreciate it until you lose it. In fact, your appreciation for breathing rises in direct proportion to its loss. You wake up one day and you can't breathe because your lungs have been clouded. And all of a sudden you are desperate for breath. You wake up one day and you've lost your liberty. And all of a sudden you are desperate for your liberty. You don't know why you lost it. You don't know where it went. And you don't know how to get it back. Well, good news, I do.
Amen.
Let me define liberty for you. John Locke had 20 volumes. But a gentleman by the name of Roger Mayberry, he reduced it to 17 words. Here it is. Do what you have agreed to do, and do not encroach on another person or their property. You say, I don't understand what that means. Well, do what you agreed to do is the basis of contractual law in the United States. Do not encroach on another person or their property is the basis of civil law. You go into a shop and you rob that shop owner, you have broken the civil law, and you should be punished. But here's the problem. When the government becomes the entity that doesn't do what it says it will do, and the government becomes the entity that treads, encroaches on your person and your property, you've got a problem. That's how we became a nation. Our founding fathers were not American. They were Englishmen. They were colonists. And there were trees all along the eastern coast. Do you know how people made their living? They cut down those trees. Everyone had a lumber mill, a sawmill in their backyard. They built their houses from the lumber. But guess what? King George sent his agents to the forests of the colonies. And these agents, without permission and without pay, tied ribbons around the tallest, the straightest, the whitest, the strongest pine trees. Why? He wanted them for his sailing ships. The colonists became very upset. And the first flag of the United States and its Navy, when we were still colonies, was a flag with a pine tree and a timber snake at the bottom with the words, "Don't tread on me." Here's the problem, folks, and I'm going to finish bringing you 3 examples of why you need to elect Wade Burleson to Congress. The government is treading on you because they have forgotten that we, the people, are the government.
Amen.
We have a bureaucracy of institutions that go by letters. It's like alphabet soup. The FDA, the CIA. You have all kinds of agencies that control agriculture and trade. So that, here's one example. The Red Ridge Dairy, right outside of Enid, called me a few weeks ago. They were distraught. They were about to go out of business because the Food and Drug Administration was coming to them. An entity out of Washington, D.C. said, "Your buttermilk is no good." But guess what? House Smith restaurants in 13 states loved their buttermilk, and they wanted it for all of their restaurants. They said it was the best buttermilk in the country. But the FDA said, no. We got to shut you down. Why? Because you are not processing this buttermilk like the big boys. Guess what? The state of Oklahoma said it was good buttermilk. But some bureaucrat who was never elected came to Oklahoma to shut down a family business. So I showed up at Red Ridge Dairy with the Food and Drug Administration officials. They're in that room. Who are you? Well, my name is Wade Burleson. I'm running for Congress. And I remember names, and I'm watching you.
Amen. Amen.
By the time it was over, I called every one of them by name. And I said, answer me this question. Have you tested this buttermilk? Oh, no, we don't need to, Mr. Burleson, because it's the process. You're telling me that this family, with this dairy, that has been here for generations, is about to be shut down by the federal government because you haven't even tested their buttermilk, but it's not the process that you like, right? Right. Who gave you that authority? You know what the answer is? Nobody. Congress alone has the constitutional authority to establish law. Let me tell you, I can preach for a long time. And if there is any law or regulation that comes to the floor of Congress that violates the Constitution and your liberty by treading on your business, I will start in the book of Genesis, and I will go from Monday morning till Friday night telling people about the book of Revelation without a bathroom break, because I will not let that happen on my watch. You say, oh wait, no, you've got to compromise. I agree with my friend Jackson. The time for compromise is over. Yeah. We are in an existential struggle for our very country.
Amen. Amen.
Now, someone might say, here's the second and third, and I'll be done. What's another illustration? Well, how about this? Anybody a cattle rancher around here? Somebody might say, what does a preacher, retired, a man with a finance degree, a wife who's on the front lines of nursing, what does he know about cattle ranching? Well, let me tell you, I know a lot about cattle ranching. I've been in northwestern Oklahoma for 30 years. Do you know what the United Nations is doing in conjunction with the United States government? Are you ready for this? They're overregulating cattle producers, ranchers in northwest Oklahoma. They're coming to you for your water. They're coming to you with regulations for sewage. They are doing everything they can to keep you out of business. Why? It's in the name of equity. 30 by 30 platforms that the United Nations is wishing to institute by the year 2030. In the name of equity, you say, I don't understand. What's equity? Well, guess what? Those Brazilian farmers, those Guatemalan farmers, those Ecuadorian farmers down south, they can't grow beef like you. And the United Nations says, that's not fair for those poor boys down there. That's not equitable. So let's shut down northwest Oklahoma cattle producing, beef producing ranchers. How? Let's let China come in and buy all of the processors and let them sell it off and reduce it to 4. You can't even process your beef. Let's do something else. Let's bring the FDA along with us. And let's go down to Ecuador and Guatemala and Brazil, and let's get their beef, bring it into the United States, and let's put an FDA stamp on it. Guess what? That has happened within the last decade. You don't know if you're buying American beef. I promise you, I will call for hearings. Who asked for that? Who did that? Who gave you the authority to do that? You see, if you want a definition of the swamp, it's the 437 agencies that have taken over without being elected, and it's Congress that has. Finally, and I'm done. My friend, Frank Lucas, and he is a friend. I called him before I decided to run. Sean Roberts cannot be here tonight. His spokesman will speak in just a moment. I'm running against him. Someone might say, why would you choose to run against a 14-term, 28-year incumbent when he's conservative? I close with this. I about fell off my chair when my wife was saying, Wade, you ought to run. You ought to run. I'm like, no, I want to write. I want to write. Wade, you ought to run. We need you. Our kids need you. I about fell off my chair when I read that on November the 30th of last year, Frank Lucas, who is not on the Agricultural Committee, Frank Lucas, who is not on the Natural Resources Committee, by his own request, he may tell you he turned out, he did not. He's a ranking member. He can choose where he wishes to serve. He has chosen financial services, big banking, and he has chosen space science and technology, big tech. And it was his committee that pushed through H.R. 550. And this was the flipping point for me. You say, I don't know what H.R. 550 is. I know you don't. So I'm about to tell you. $500 million, $500 million, given to the government so that everybody take your phone out and look at it. The government can put technology on your phone, are you ready for this? To tell you whether or not you're healthy. Mark Sherman, that's the truth. It's also a platform to give you a social score. Do you speak out against the government? Oh, we're going to take away your digital dollars that are coming in a couple of years. Unbelievable to me. It's also the way the government can control you. And I York Times, above the fold. New York Times, 3 weeks ago, this past Sunday, an article, an expose on the same technology used by the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. Do you know what this liberal newspaper said? An attorney in communist China took his phone with this same platform of technology on it to the airport. He was flying to see his client, who was a 71-year-old dissident. She had spoken out against the government. There had not been a case of COVID in the city. He had not been sick. He puts his phone on the counter for his electronic ticket, and his health light turns from green to red. All of a sudden, police appear, and in the name of public health, he is taken into quarantine, to prison. That's in December. Today is Monday, March the 14th. That man is still in prison. If you think that can't happen in America, I am telling you, you are absolutely mistaken. I'm a researcher, I'm a reader, I know my history, and I will fight for you, I will fight for your grandkids, I will fight for your great-grandkids, and I promise I'm not doing it to get famous, I'm not doing it for the money, I'm not a politician, I'm just like you. I'm like Wade Burleson,